The future is here. An innovation that will change the way the industry works. A Hot 100 chart, updated daily. The most accurate price guide on the market. Every card has its own profile with a wealth of information. Know the precise, real-time value of any card in the system. On demand. You now have the power to unlock the secrets of the hobby. The game changer is here. Card Ladder.
How's everyone doing tonight? What's up? I'm in a good mood, guys. I'm in a great mood. Lakers dominated. LeBron didn't have to do anything tonight. What's up, Rodman? Scrolling? No, I'm actually scrolling by cards that have decreased the most in the last month. We got 2 hours tonight. Stay awake, gentlemen. What's up, Brett? How's it going, man? Friday night. I love this show, guys. I love having all you guys on with us. It's a lot of fun for us. Waiting on Christopher. I don't know how to run this show. I need Chris. I just say the crazy things. He does all the organizations. What's up, Adam? Yo, Yam Wax, man. Heard you on Gary V today. Made an appearance on Gary V. That was pretty tight. That was fun. How's everybody doing? Yeah. This week we released the ability to sort in the reverse order on the ladder, so you can sort by the who's dropped the most in monthly percentage and daily percentage. I really like to use that one. Weekly percentage. Who's dropping the most? Who has the lowest score in the ladder? Things like that. It's kind of interesting because, like, you know, we talk about, like, not buying what's hot right now, so it's kind of, you can almost just, like, reverse the order, and, like, that's kind of stuff you want to look at to buy. And especially if you, like, reverse the order on weekly change and then search, like, LeBron, you're like, oh, I just want to buy. It's dipped the most in the last week. It's, like, not even a terrible strategy because stuff goes up and down. And what's up, Chris?
What's going on?
I was just telling people that you can almost just like reverse the sort on the weekly change or monthly change and just like attack that for what to buy.
Dude, you can. Jordan from Sports Card Analytics has made a half a dozen posts on that very topic this week. Check out his page. He's been identifying some really interesting buys. And, you know, look, you see some LeBron cards there. I mean, come on. Like, that is opportunity waiting to happen, especially if you watch tonight's game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like, a lot of the stuff that was super overhyped for a while, like 2019 Prism, was, like, way overpriced. It just went up. It just, like, didn't make any sense. The pop started to catch up, and those have dipped significantly to the point now where it's like, man, they've gone down so much, you almost want to consider buying it again.
Yeah, I think that is a very sound strategy right now. I'm displaying here, let's see, 5 boxes. Christina and I have been hitting up some shops lately, some of the shops here in LA and one in New Mexico. We have 2 Donruss football boxes. Those are $200 a piece. You really can't beat football prices when you compare them to basketball. We've got a Mosaic hobby here. We definitely paid way too much money for that. We found this Topps Chrome UFC box on a shelf at Walmart. They go for like $40 on eBay. It was $20 at Walmart. So that was a no-brainer. and then some nice Chronicles basketball here just to get those numbered rookies and those nice short printed rookies coming out. So just to show what I'm displaying here, degeneracy in full force. And we were at those shops. I have never seen, so like we went to Bullpen LA and we went to Burbank Sports Cards. Never seen those shops so active. Those shops in the middle of a Friday afternoon were just, pretty much wall to wall with customers. I mean, outside of trade nights, you just don't see that type of activity. So yeah, SoCal, we did go to Burbank. So that was really interesting to see. And today is Bowman Chrome baseball day. So like a lot of guys were in there picking up Bowman Chrome boxes. But man, those shops were very, very active, which was fun, interesting to see. So, okay. Do you want to just talk Nuggets Lakers for a minute here and the total evisceration of the Nuggets that just happened?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the foul trouble was a really big issue for the Nuggets. They just couldn't get in any sort of rhythm, and the Lakers just kept them kind of on their heels because of the foul trouble. So I think this game is kind of a throwaway game for the Nuggets, and we'll see what happens in game 2. I don't take too much from this game. It was just kind of a beat down. The matchups are definitely an issue for the Nuggets right now. They have to figure out how to slow down Anthony Davis. He had 37 tonight, and he was just dominating. And LeBron didn't even score in the second half, and they still were blowing him out. So Nuggets have a lot of issues right now, but as we've seen from them, they're pretty resilient and they're not going to back down or anything. So I throw this game away, and we'll see what happens in game 2.
Yeah, definitely. And you messaged me. You were like, dude, are you finally prepared to admit that Anthony Davis is legit? Dude, he played 33 minutes. He had 37 points, 10 rebounds, and 4 assists. Pretty dang impressive for him.
Yep.
A funny stat line, JaVale McGee played 11 minutes, and he had as many rebounds, assists, and points as I did. So there's that. But Dwight Howard played 16 minutes. He had 13 and 3. It was just a nice, deep showing from the Lakers. Rondo was terrific. LeBron, when he needs to be, is obviously far and away the best player on the floor. So very, very interesting game there. The Nuggets are going to have to rebound big time and change up some of their approach here. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have so many questions tonight, and I really appreciate everybody who chimes in. The first one, we had several messages on it. I'll read 2 of them. This one's from Mike Pinkerton 50. He says, are you guys going to add a card exchange part to Card Ladder? And Black Griffin Card says, is there a possibility of Card Ladder adding a marketplace because eBay needs to die? Now, eBay is an important tool because it allows people to access sports cards for the first time with a familiar brand, probably a tool, an app that they've used before. So like eBay is important. It really sets the market for cards. So like eBay is always going to be, I think, an important centerpiece of the sports card marketplace. But there are issues with it too. Return policies, people have issues with those. Fees are exorbitant. So there are some issues with eBay. So can we say anything about Card Ladder and a potential marketplace?
Yeah, that's like the top of our list right now. We're discussing it as a unit, and we have some ideas. Chris, you and I talked earlier today, just kind of like high level about what we want to do, and we're definitely working on it. And we're gonna bring it out where it's just like free for everyone. We just want to make it free. I think that's kind of the main thing is like people just want a fun place to go and like search for stuff to buy and then sell stuff pretty quickly and easily. And we have a pretty solid platform to be able to launch it from. So I think it should be pretty simple in theory. We just got to make sure we kind of do it right legally and make sure that it's like the right experience for everybody because we don't want to mess it up. So we're sort of taking our time with it, but it is in the works.
Absolutely. It's an exciting development. I can't wait to make the buying and selling process smoother and easier for people. And yeah, like Josh said, we want to bring this to you guys, to the great Card Ladder members who we love and appreciate for free. So that's that. Okay, let's get into some of the other topics here. Run with Bulls 23 comes in with this question. And it's kind of a long one, but it's a good one. He said, I was wondering if you guys could address how large the current sports card hobby landscape is. Specifically, how large of an industry sports cards is currently market cap wise. For example, the global fine arts market was valued at $67 billion in 2018. The current market cap of Bitcoin is around $120 billion. Do you have any idea approximately how large the sports card industry is? I'm just curious because the market cap can give an indication of how large this hobby will be in 5 to 10 years. And I see Josh has pulled it up. We provide this information for the 3,300 approximately cards we have in our system. So what do we have for the market cap of those 3,300 cards?
1.75 billion.
1.75 billion. So, and that number fluctuates too as cards go up and down in value. So it's a dynamic number. And we provide that number specifically for this purpose, for tracking, how big is this market and how big is this industry? And we have some of the most important cards in the hobby already in the database, whether it's Babe Ruth, 1933 Gaudi, whether it's LeBron James rookie cards, Kobe rookie cards, Jordan rookie cards, Zion, Luka, Mike Trout, Tatis, etc. So is that number representative of the total market cap? No, there's still plenty more cards. But when you look at 1.7 billion, that gives you kind of a starting place, a decent, ballpark figure for if you kind of look at the 3,000 most important cards in the hobby, it's somewhere around there. Okay.
Yeah, it's still like just 1.75 related to those other staggering numbers you gave. Still really low, like the overall market cap of cards is still fairly low compared to those other things, which is interesting.
Yeah, it is. I'm sure fine art is much bigger than 67 billion.
Yep.
Also. So yeah, that's a very it is. There's I don't know how insightful that number truly is. Because you can see also that we track the value of how much sports cards sell daily on eBay. We generate a data point, and I think the average is around $500,000 per day. And then when like PWCC auctions go off, it shoots up to like 2 million. So that kind of gives you an idea of like market volume per day, transaction volume also. Yeah, I like what Yamwax said though. You could definitely infer that there is room to run here in this market. Holy Catfish says, how are you getting to that number exactly? That number is just if a card is slabbed, which is the vast majority of our database, you take the pop report, which we gather for each card, and it updates all the time. And you take the pop report, you just multiply it by the current market value of the card. That gives you the market cap for that specific grade of that specific card. And then you just sum all of those numbers and you get the total market cap. Okay, so another question on the market. Krebs and Card says, are we heading for an overall market crash? So a totally different spirit of this question than the previous one. Are we heading for an overall market crash, or are we experiencing a pullback? What do you think about that?
I think it's a pullback, and I think it's even more specifically a pullback just in certain segments of the hobby. Like, you can speak to this better than I can, but I'm still seeing a lot of all-time highs in some of the rarer items, and we're seeing money moved from one segment to the other. Like, we're seeing money moving from rookie prisms over to vintage right now. We talked about this a lot last week. I don't really see a crash, man. I just feel like there's just so much momentum and people like having fun right now in the hobby, even though like some people are losing money on the prism stuff. People are just moving into other things. The hobby itself is louder than ever from my perspective. Like, I'm getting more DMs than I ever have. We've got more people on Card Ladder than ever. The overall like market cap and the feel of the hobby and the excitement and the people on social media keeps growing. So it makes it hard to say that there's a crash. And also like the crashes that have occurred in like the stock market and Bitcoin are just like speculative crashes because people are losing money on their financial side, whereas the hobby will always have some base of collectors sticking around, because when the market does quote unquote crash on some of this stuff, like the collectors will be thrilled because their stuff will be cheaper, and they're going to keep their prices up on some of the stuff because they still want it. So it's hard to say that there will be just like a full out crash. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we're I agree with everything. And we're exiting a very unusual period in the hobby where we had 3 to 4 months of no sports at all. And that means there was no money going to gambling. That, you know, that means people were like really getting into cards. Maybe they were, you know, going too far into the speculative aspect of cards. I mean, could you imagine if there, instead of like waiting a few months for the bubble to start, there had been a year? Like, I think we would have seen speculation on some of these players that just would have been astonishing. And I think we're seeing a correction now where the hobby is returning back to some of the fundamentals that have always guided it, which is that, you know, at the end of the day, it's very hard to become a player who, you know, will have that same expectation and energy level when the NBA playoffs are over that they had going into them. And then, you know, there's also some statistics. Darren Ravel had a tweet that in August, New Jersey recorded the highest handle in gambling that it ever recorded. In other words, more money was spent on gambling in New Jersey in August than had ever been spent in that state prior. And I think it was an all-time high for any state. So I think also some people just kind of like went back to gambling really quick.
Yeah.
And I think like there will be a correction in gambling too, as people kind of the excitement of the return of gambling sort of mellows out a bit, and people, you know, the shiny new object was gambling. I think that's sort of a return now. That we'll see a return to normalcy in gambling too. And then, like you said, like there, you know, all eyes are on the base PSA 10s of the key players, and that there's reason for that. Those can be understood as proxies for the markets of those players, but at the same time, you know, those were like really due for a sensible correction. And like you said too, like there are dozens of all-time highs on various cards being set every day. The Michael Jordan 1986 Fleer sticker PSA 10 just recorded a new all-time high yesterday of $42,000. The LeBron James Topps Chrome Refractor BGS 9.5 just recorded its own new all-time high of $45,000. The key iconic and rare cards are continuing to set all-time highs right now. So, you know, it just depends upon where you're looking. And if people sort of redirect their focus to the cards that are performing well right now, you would see that it's not so much even a pullback necessarily as it is a reallocation of money to different aspects of the hobby. And, you know, check your email for the Card Ladder daily email. You'll see the top 3 headlines, or even better, go to our news feed. You'll see anywhere up to a dozen headlines every day that are underscoring exciting and relevant cards that are performing very well. So, you know, it's hard to even to figure out sort of, is this even a pullback, or is it just a reallocation of money in non-obvious ways?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. Like from the stuff that I dabble in, which is sort of the more rare stuff, like it's kind of business as usual, honestly. Like the stuff's just like kind of the same price as it's been the last few months. And I know some friends that are buying like super rare Jordan stuff that's like all-time highs privately. So, you know, it's just kind of the same.
Yeah, indeed. And Lefko points out Dr. J, Jerry West, and others have been dropping, not just Prism base. And he's right about that. You know, any time a card just like 10x's in a month, it's hard to see that as being sustainable. So it just kind of depends on what your reference point is, in my view, because if your reference point is 3 months ago, even Prism base cards, even the Kawhi Prism base card, which has retreated back to $2,000 from its $6,000 peak, even that card is up from where it was 3 months ago. So it all kind of depends on what your reference point is as well. Okay. Here's a question. This is gold right here in the market. I couldn't believe what these were selling for. You could get, it was a pack of 50 was going of Card Saver ones for $15 for one pack. It was $15 for Card Saver ones. The Great Trader writes in, why are Card Saver ones so hard to get and selling on eBay for 3 times their retail value? I mean, I think obviously everybody's trying to grade stuff right now. I don't know if you have anything else to chime in on that. It's just a funny fact of the hobby right now that literally Card Savers are just, oh, look at that, sitting on gold bars over there.
Yeah, that's just supply and demand. Like everyone's grading cards. Pretty simple.
Yeah, and FYI, PSA put out a PSA saying that you can send stuff in top loaders.
Top loader.
Yeah, so there's no need to spend $15 on this. There's just no need, and what is this like? It's just the toilet paper run all over again here. Just like
Right.
People hoarding these now, but this market, man. Okay. Let's see. Let me shift over to football for a second. We had some questions come in on football. Yam Wax says, look at National Treasure's RPAs in football, specifically wide receivers and running backs. They're really cheap with new guys chasing the shiny stuff right now. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the football market on the National Treasures RPAs is way behind on the knowledge side from basketball. Like the ratio is way off. Like the silver Prism PSA 10s are like half the price, or the ratio is even less than that to the RPA out of 99, which is way off. Way off. It's like insanely off. In basketball, it's like 4 to 5x. And football right now, it's like 2x. I think that'll change. So, if that's what you think, if you think that gap is too wide, buy it. So.
Yeah. I recently got a McCaffrey Prism Gold rookie, a PSA 9, and a National Treasures RPA BGS 9.5, and that NTRPA 9.5 is only a pop 12. And the NTRPA was about 70% of what the Gold Prism cost me. I definitely overpaid for both, but I was surprised that the NTRPA was able to be had for that much cheaper than a PSA 9 of the Gold Prism. Okay, another football cards question. This one comes in from Drake's Sports Cards. He says, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes. How would you rank them in terms of investments at current pricing? And then, of course, he put this question on the Instagram post, so I always reply back, well, what do you think? And his reply was, number one, he likes Kyler the best because he's the lowest price and he has a favorable schedule in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Number two, he put Lamar, who has an exciting offense and should win games. His Prism RC is expensive, but there are other opportunities like Select. And then third, he put Mahomes. He said Mahomes has room to grow, but his cards are expensive as someone priced in as if he'll win another Super Bowl and MVP. So that's how he ranked it. 1, Kyler, 2, Lamar, 3, Mahomes. How do you rank Kyler, Lamar, and Mahomes based on their current pricing?
I reverse the ranking. I go Mahomes 1, Lamar 2, Kyler 3. That's mostly because I hear that argument a lot of they're too expensive, so I can't afford it and they're not a good investment. But that's kind of what's caught a lot of these other channels when they make their picks is they're trying to get too cute with it and they're trying to pick undervalued guys and cheap guys when if they would have just stuck with the best players in the leagues, they would have done better. I think it holds true for those 3 guys as well. I just would rather just stay safe and pick Mahomes.
Yeah, I agree. I would reverse the order as well, dude. Come on, Mahomes is like a clear-cut generational talent. Not to say that the other two don't have merit as well, but man, Mahomes is a Super Bowl MVP already. The guy has an incredible offensive array of weapons surrounding him. You have Clyde Edwards-Helaire now, the hottest thing in the hobby for a day last week. Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, just the list goes on. Kelsey, etc. Mahomes, man, that to me is a very exciting player to collect. 2017 product is pretty darn sweet. You have your choice of some really nice high-end stuff, and you can also get in at a number of different levels. You know what's interesting too? So the question inquires about current prices, and that's a factor, but trajectory is a factor too. So if you look at the 2017 Prism Mahomes, which his rookie card from Prism is a silver, and the pop is around 800 to 900. That card has retreated over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and it's sort of plateaued at its current value. So if Mahomes gets poised to do something special again this season, which if anybody's going to, it's probably going to be him. In my opinion, he's the safest one of those. I don't know, man. That might not be a terrible time, but by the same token, man, that card is so expensive already too. Now, on the other hand, Kyler's trajectory is straight up right now. His cards are setting all-time highs. You know, his tricolor concourse select PSA 10 just set a monstrous new all-time high yesterday. It nearly tripled what it had prior sold for. So like Kyler's trajectory is just like going up right now. There you go. So like Kyler is like on this upward rise, whereas like Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, you know, their cards are not. So I don't know how that factors into the calculus here, but I don't know. I don't, you know, those are three quarterbacks that I bet all three are pretty fun to collect.
Someone in the chat asked for us to add more color blast. We got a ton of color blast.
We have every basketball color blast, or nearly every one.
More football, maybe.
More football, yeah. To the person who asked that, please just put in the player that you want to see, or even better, DM it to me. DM me the player's color blast that you want to see, and yeah, we'll get it in there. We love. I love color blast. It's so expensive. Everybody loves it, but. And some fun we did also. We added every football stained glass from Mosaic this year too. Those will be fun cards to watch. And those the trajectory of those cards is so instructive for what happens when a new product comes out, because all 10 are in there and all 10 of them are losing like 10% a day in value right now. So which is what happens when a hot new product comes out and then the market floods with it. Okay, I'm going to move on from football for a second here, although we have another interesting question on it. Let's see here. All right, let's talk about non-sports cards and alternative non-mainstream sports cards for a second here. Yam Wax writes in, he says, Logan Paul is rumored to have bought the $200,000 Pokemon box and plans to open it on his channel.
Don't do that.
Oh, don't open Wax. Don't open Wax.
Don't do that. That's like such an iconic box. That would be such a sweet piece to own. It's like an 86 Fleer box. Like, don't open it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to get a PSA 10 Charizard and like a bunch of other PSA 10s, and you're probably not going to. Even the odds of getting a Charizard in one of those boxes isn't like a sure thing. It's pretty, you get a lot of Charizards in those boxes, but like it's not like 100% like the Jordan Fleer. And even if you do, you have to get a PSA 10, and you got to get a bunch of other 10s. Please do not open that box. It's such a great. I want more sealed first edition based Pokemon to like be alive in the world. Please don't open that.
There you go, Logan. If you're listening, that's sage advice. Yamwax comes in with another question. He says, vintage sports video games. I picked up Madden and Tecmo Bowl complete in box. Vintage sports video games. What do you think?
I've been doing a little research in the video game world. I'm not ready to like talk about it too much yet because I don't have enough knowledge on it, and I don't want to just like say random crap and make picks and put my 5 fingers up and all that bullshit. So I'm not ready to talk about it, but I have been looking at it. It is a thing. Sealed video games are like a real thing that's on the rise. There's legit markets for it, and if you want to learn more, look into it.
Yeah, and hit up Lamim James because he's constantly having WATA-graded video games coming in his mail days. He's got more of those than Trae Young cards these days. Okay. SGE Sports 922 says, are vintage boxing cards a reach? Well, I could tell you this much. Mike Tyson cards, his Italian rookie cards, we're tracking those in pretty much every grade. Those have been setting record highs every time they sell, you know, to the tune of just crazy numbers. I think like a mid-range PSA, I don't remember the grade of it, like a mid-range PSA just did like 18,000 the other day. So yeah, that's the card right there. So, you know, again, just like with vintage, as Lefko pointed out, you know, when cards have these crazy high increases suddenly, you know, there's some cause for caution there. But Mike Tyson's the GOAT, and people love him. So, you know, two sides to that coin.
I'm honestly like a little nervous about these like kind of more oddball type cards like Muhammad Ali and Tyson, even like Federer, because these aren't like established cards. You know, like there's not a lot of people that like collected them up until very recently, just because of like the whole hype to like find the next thing. I know that they're like superstar athletes, so you're like it's not too risky, but I would just be a little cautious with some of those. Like some of those feel a little bit inflated. Like this PSA 8 Tyson, it went up to 12 grand, and then the next copy sold for less than 8. So I don't know that I would just like go throw $15,000 at a card that's never been popular until the last 6 months. It's a little risky.
Yeah, definitely. And one more question on the non, typical mainstream sports cards. Scout Dude, my man, writes in 2 words: soccer cards. Period. What do we have anything to say about soccer cards right now? Definitely a polarizing topic in the hobby, no doubt about it. You have a Lionel Messi, his Mega Cracks, I think it is, rookie card is a PWCC right now, the PSA 10. The BGS 9.5 just did like 40,000. The PSA 10 is already at 60. PWCC even sent out an email specifically hyping this card, saying because it's only like pop 20. Yep, that's the one. Saying that because the PSA 10 is only like a pop 20, that this card apparently could be in the $250,000 soon. I mean,
this is the most boring looking card I've ever seen.
It's my ignorance on sports cards, but which I fully admit. But if I walked by a table at the National and I just saw that card amongst a pile of others, it definitely would not impress me very much. But the PWCC email blast says Messi is recognized as the GOAT. I think Pele fans would like to quibble over that, but nonetheless, that card is like absolutely surging right now if these auction results are to be believed. But on the other hand, we saw what according to the charts and the sales data, looks like almost resembling a pump and dump that happened with Prism base soccer cards PSA 10, such as the Mbappe and others, Ronaldo, everybody. Look, I mean, that is a worrisome graph to look at. But but it's not unique to soccer. We saw that happen with many Prism-based cards. But the ratios, the amount that card went up and then went back down, is alarming. 5,000 to 1,000, quite a big percentage drop for those cards. So we'll see what the future holds for those cards. But I don't know. Those are some thoughts on soccer. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on soccer.
Someone else asked about the SI for kids cards. Like, I don't know, man. I'm just not seeing it. Like, they're not even like cards. They're like literally cutouts from like a kid's magazine. It's just like, how far are we willing to go on this path of finding the next thing? It seems a little odd to me.
Yeah, we talked last week about like zagging too hard. Some of this stuff is like really hardcore zagging. I don't want to take away from anybody who was like way ahead of that curve and they got in and got these cards for pennies on the dollar, and now they're sitting on like stockpiles of them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, well done, right? So that's awesome for those people. But by the same token, if you zag too hard for the purpose of investing, it just doesn't. It starts like veering too far away from what makes card collecting and what makes the card collecting market what it is. This market is predicated and built on collecting and on the desire to own cards for their intrinsic value to you, and not simply as the proposition that, well, they're going to go up in value. At that point, things start getting super speculative, and the whole reason why cards have value in the first place starts to get overlooked. You had a nice Instagram story post today. Maybe you could just explain that a little bit more, and just repeat it in case anybody didn't see it.
Well, first I want to say, like, if you because a lot of people asked us a couple months ago what they should do with their base Prism PSA 10, and we told them to sell, even though like it went up another few weeks after that. I would say the same thing on that sort of oddball stuff. Like if you've hit it and you bought it for $50 a piece and now they're 2,000, like take your profit, please. Today I just made a Instagram story post. Actually, I mean, this is your thing. You've been talking about this more than I have. It's just like the hobby, the backbone of the hobby and how it's built is through collecting and collectors. And there always needs to be someone at the end of the line to buy the card, and it's generally going to be a collector. So if you're thinking about what players to quote unquote invest in, and if that's your goal, then think about players that are heavily collected instead of players that are heavily invested. You don't want to chase the investment. You want to chase other people that want to collect that thing. And it's just like a really easy way to kind of turn it around and think about it a little more critically on who you're going to potentially collect. Because I told you this morning, and I was like, I really want to buy some Lucas stuff because I think he's sort of like established himself enough now where I feel comfortable. But dude, some of this stuff is so damn expensive that I can't. And I think the reason that it is I hear so much about people collecting Luka, and I see like posts from really smart guys that have been collecting really high end Jordan and LeBron stuff for years, buying Luka stuff, even like base stuff, just so they can get their hands on it, because collecting him is a very appealing thing. He's a very appealing player to collect. You know, he's got a great personality. He works really hard. He's got a fun game. He's a very interesting player on the court and off the court, and he's very collectible. So if you sense that like you see a lot of people collecting someone or something, or some like set or something, and you feel like there's a lot of people collecting this thing, but it's not really talked about on the investment side, I think there's an angle there to go after it. And kind of the reverse of that is if there's someone that you only hear talking about them from the investment side. I don't want to pick on Kawhi, but I honestly don't hear that many people that collect Kawhi. And so we saw this sort of like big jump up to like make money on Kawhi leading up to the playoffs, and then his stuff is like tanked because he didn't perform. Those are the kind of guys that make me nervous. When you just don't know anyone that like collects them. You only hear about people talking about how he should be more expensive because of the player he is, but you don't act like nobody actually wants to buy it anyways.
Yeah, I agree. Kawhi is a really interesting case study. People got very worried when Giannis's Prism base rookie card from 2013 Prism went from 7K peak down to, I think, as low as about 3,200. And now I've been seeing sales come in around 3,500 for a few nights in a row. So almost true to the textbook cycle that has repeated for Giannis like 4 times now. It happened last year in the playoffs, except it was a little bit later in the Eastern Conference Finals. But the same thing has happened to Giannis over and over again, where it's happened 4 times over the course of his career now, where his cards double or more, and then they ultimately have a 50% pullback. So like it was like textbook that it went up to 7, it came back down to 35, and now it's at 35 again. But you compare to Kawhi got up to 6, and it has come all the way down. I want to say I saw a sale come in at like 2,200.
Yeah.
So, but I don't hear it quite as many people talking or being worried about Kawhi as they are worried about Giannis. And, so I think Giannis probably, I think it's a safe thing to say he has more collectors right now than Kawhi probably does. Kawhi definitely there was a lot of expectation built into that based on the hype surrounding the Clippers, and that hype turned out to be not very reliable. I think the Nuggets exposed that clearly in round 2. So, that's part of the game of, speculating on commodity rookie cards of players. Now, what's interesting is that, but Kawhi's NTRPA 9.5, I just saw one of those sales come in at 22,000 last night, or maybe 22.5. That's not nearly the same drop off from the previous sale, which was 24. So, the NTRPA never got speculated up, and then it didn't have the same room to crash either. Interesting.
That is very interesting. I didn't know that. Did you just fucking memorize this thing? It's so insane. You're like quoting numbers and I'm looking at them as you say them, and you're like 100% accurate. Anyways, that's a very interesting point that I don't want anyone to miss, so I'm going to really point it out. the Kawhi base Prism went from 2000 to 6000 back to 2000, and the NTRPA in that same timeline has basically gone up from like 14 grand to 25 and then stayed at 22. It's very interesting. It's like the people that own NTRPAs still, it's like the NTRPA is like the long-term investment card for a player, and the Prism base is like following their day-to-day almost, because like it's tracking the day-to-day sales of it, whereas the RPA just sells less. Plus the NTRPA is just like a more of a collectible card where people want to finish the sets for RPAs, and there's just less of them to go around. There's all these different factors, but it's very interesting to call that out, that like Kawhi basically like choked in the playoffs, and his stuff is like going down as much as you'll see it go down, and the RPA didn't even move.
Right. Great. I mean, of all the case studies there, okay, now 8 Everlast 24 says he sold a Kawaii Gem NTRPA Spur logo patch for 42 a few months ago. Well, that's a relevant data point. We saw the Kawaii Gold Prism do 100,000 not terribly long ago, and then it's hard to know what that card might be worth right now, but I think that was maybe the peak or close to the peak of Kawhi's hype. And for those wondering who might not know, the Kawhi RPA is numbered to 199, not quite as scarce as some of the other RPAs, but yeah, I think like even if you compare 42 to 24, versus the ratio of 6 to 2, you still saw a much more precipitous drop off in the commodity cards, and that's going to be the nature of those cards going forward, as they're increasingly seen as investments. This is something we talked about months ago, is that as this market gets more and more investment oriented, it's going to move more and more like investment-oriented markets. There's going to be, people who come in and manipulate that market for the purpose of offloading their quantity. And like, I don't mean manipulate in a legal sense, but manipulate in terms of like, look, people are buying into the hype on this stuff. I've got a bunch of copies of it. So, let's go ahead and maybe I'll buy a few more copies at this higher price, establish a few more comps, and then all of a sudden, we've got some market momentum going here. And when the momentum train gets going, this is something Kaushik had pointed out in his Instagram story not long ago, and he sent a question about it a few weeks ago. When you look at stocks, he was pointing out Tesla. He said Tesla seems to be driven largely by momentum, just the price momentum. It goes up, and then that makes more people want to buy as it keeps going up, and it makes more people want to buy as it keeps going up. And you almost can no longer even tie the stock's price to any fundamental. It's just a momentum thing. And in commodity cards, you're going to see momentum driving prices in both directions as well. Rare and more collectible items are naturally going to be more insulated from that for supply and demand reasons. As you pointed out, there's just a lot fewer of them, and they're chased by collectors who have more of a long-term perspective rather than a short-term flip perspective. Okay. Let's see here. There's some talk in the chat right now, and a question came in about this too. The question was pertaining to the price difference between PSA 9s and PSA 10s. The question was relating to how come there's differences between 10s and 9s. And like the Lamar Jackson PSA 10 versus PSA 9 Prism base, there's a huge gap there, and there's not such a big gap maybe on other cards. And like what explains that really easily is that the 2018 Prism base Lamar Jackson was really hard to grade. There's like 300 maybe. I don't know what the pop is on the PSA 10, but it's much lower than the PSA 9. So there's a huge gap between Lamar's Prism base PSA 10 and Prism base 9, and that's because of condition sensitivity. People know that it's tougher to get a 10. And that explains it. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on the difference between 9s and 10s. Some thoughts come to me about like investors seem to prefer 10s. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on the gem rate. Like this Lamar, for example, like you said, the pop on the PSA 9 is 1600 and the 10 is only 400. And in most like modern Prism, that ratio is a lot more skewed to the 10. So like the Lamar is kind of an interesting case. It's just like so much harder to get the 10 than these other ones, and the market's adjusting for that. I've heard the talk of like nines being, undervalued relative to tens. I'm not sure that I see it that way, to be honest. Like because the investors like tens, but collectors like tens too. Um, so I would keep that in mind when thinking about that statement. And I've heard Gary Vee talk about like nines closing the gap. I think that's more of like a supply issue where like the tens are sort of tucked away into collections and the nines become the only thing available in the market. So people just sort of like naturally start paying up for nines. That happens in Pokemon because like the tens of the big like first edition base cards are just sort of like locked away in collections and they just don't really show up very often. People don't want to sell those. So like because of that, the nine prices have gone up a lot. I'm not sure that's quite as much of a thing with these like more common cards. And like obviously the more rare it gets, like people just care less about the grade, like, 90s grail cards and stuff, like eights and nines and tens are all pretty similar. But yeah, I would be a little cautious of that to like go out and just buy a bunch of nines just because you feel like the nines are undervalued. I still think the tens deserve the extra price because collectors and investors want the tens.
Yeah, they do. There's something nice about the perfection of a 10. It's the best possible technical grade that PSA can issue. So it obviously grading narrows the available supply of a card even further than its print run. And with that 2018 Prism base Lamar, 400 is that's half what Mahomes is. And his was more short printed and it was a silver.
Yeah.
So
you can say whatever you want about grading companies and how they get it wrong sometimes, but like honestly, in general, like the tens are tens and the nines are nines. There's a reason, right? These people are like still professional graders. And when I assess cards myself before I send them in general, like they line up pretty much with what I expect. And like sometimes, yeah, like I wish I would have got a 10, but I got a 9. So I'm not sure that I like the people that bitch about the grades being wrong are much louder than the ones that are like, yeah, that was right. It's a 9, it's a 10, right? Like you're just not going to hear people be like, yeah, they're like in general correct. You're just going to hear people bitching about the other side. So like I wouldn't totally discount the fact that like, yeah, a 10 is like a better condition card than a 9, like for the vast majority of times.
Yeah. How about you? I mean, what do you feel about 10s in terms of adding to your collection versus 9s? Like, are you willing to go out and pay a substantial premium for a 10 for a piece for the collection?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I had an interview today and I came up with this phrase. I don't know if I've ever heard it before. It's an end of the road card. And what I mean by that is, stay with me on this. It's like you've been looking for a card to add to your PC for a long time, and you've like wanted to get it in the perfect grade, but it's just hard to get it in the 10. And you can get a 9 fairly easily, and you've got a 9. When you get that 10 and you lock it into your PC, it's like this is the end of the road. I've gotten the highest grade I can get. It's now in my PC. I don't have to worry about this card anymore. I've reached the mountaintop of getting this card in the best condition possible. And it's the end of the road for this card. Like now it's time to move on to the next card. This one's locked into my PC. So there's a lot of like people that look for having the 10 to build out their collection. And once they have it, and for me personally, yeah, I mean, dude, I've got some really cool PSA 10 gold LeBron cards, and I've got like a PSA 8, and then it's like, it bothers me. As much as I hate to say it as a collector, but like it bothers me that one of them's an 8 and I have a 9, and then like these other ones are 10s. I wish they were all 10s. Like I would definitely like sell my 8 or my 9 and like upgrade to a 10 if the opportunity came up properly. Because then again, like that Choctaw Gold 10 that I have, I just feel like so good looking at that card because it's like it's a 10. The pop is really low. It's a really rare card. It's just like, this is it, man. I'm never gonna upgrade this card. It's the end of the road for this, and I love it. Whereas like my 2009 Topps Chrome Gold LeBron's an 8, and it bothers me.
Yeah, dude. You like reminded me of something. Is I was maybe veering down the wrong thought channel, and you just like put an exclamation point on it, dude. Collectors love grade. They put for the OCD among us. Having consistency in your PC, there are Jordan collectors out there who literally like MD Farm 23, Josh Keane. These guys are great examples of guys who will only buy BGS 9s. And in MD Farm's case, the centering has to be a 9.5. It has to meet those specific criteria. And that's for a very collector-oriented reason, for the consistency across all their slabs, so that like when they pull them out and look at them, they can enjoy it. They don't, dude, there is a real stress that I can relate to as well when I pull out my PC. I just look at a card that has a tough grade, and it does stress me out because I'm like, one of the first things I'm reminded of is the flaw. Oh, okay, this card has a flaw, you know, and I don't want that to be the first thing I think about when I look at my cards and enjoy them. So there definitely are collector fundamentals at play for why 10s are cherished. And once again, I think that collector fundamental, like that I love the end of the road card, like that fundamental is why 10s get these premiums in the first place, because long before this became an investment space, in investment influence space, 10s were still getting premiums for exactly the reason that you laid out.
Yeah. I do think, though, someone just pointed right now, I do think the 9.5 is an interesting take, because like the 9.5 is still gem, and it's a pretty decent value compared to the 10. And it's, you know, there's a lot of guys out there, collectors included, that love 9.5s, and they build walls of cards of 9.5 stuff. So, you know, if you like if you're okay with 9.5s over PSA 10, I think it's a great option as a collector. And also just like, yeah, you don't like take what I'm saying for gospel. And if like there's like 9s, like there's guys that you and I know that like only collect BGS 9s because they love having more cards in BGS 9 than they would if they did 9.5s. So like as a collector, it's just like, I'm just gonna side with what the collector wants out of this situation. And in general, a collector wants something mint. You know, like that's been the whole basis of cards, and that's why grading exists. And people can tell you buy the card, not the grade, all day long, but like the money talks, and people want the higher grade because they want the professional opinion on it. They enjoy that side of it, and I do as well. But in general, collectors want things that are mint. So having like a PSA 9, a BGS 9, a 9.5, PSA 10, it matters a lot, and it just does, and it's always going to. And if some better grading company comes along where there's less subjectivity to it and it's more accurate, then sure, yeah, like they'll take more market and the grades will be more accurate. That's great. Still, I mean, at that point, grades are going to be even more important. You know, like the more accurate it gets, the more important the grades become, and the more important the grading systems become. So I know that like we as collectors, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to worry about grading, but it does exist, and collectors like it, and I do as well. So
yeah, dude. Oh my God, I'm so glad we talked about that. I needed that reorientation of how to think about that topic, and it just freaking nailed it. Lefko writes in, he goes, hobby tip, put a Post-it note on the slab and give it whatever grade you want. I have a few PSA 11s now. Dude, congratulations. Dude, if I was PSA, I would give you 11s just to keep doing reveal videos. His PSA sub reveal video the other week was absolutely hilarious. He may have had a glass of rosé in him already. Dude, all I know is my next PSA sub, I'm going to pay Lefko whatever he wants. I'm going to get the Left Coaster going. I'm going to send it to him and just let him talk about the cards, because that was one of the most entertaining pieces of hobby concepts I've seen in a long time. Go check out Lefko's PSA sub reveal if you haven't already. Maybe Lefko, maybe you could give guys tips. Like, dude, Josh, your PSA sub reveals are freaking insanely viewed. Yo, people love your style. I've never done a sub reveal because it would be the most boring thing ever. So I don't know. Maybe people could give some tips. Do you have any tips on how to do a PSA sub reveal video? Maybe that's a decent thing.
First of all, I would love to do another one, but I haven't gotten any fucking cards back in so long. How to do it? I don't know. I don't really have a strategy. I'm kind of lame, honestly. I just like show the cards and go through them and talk about like why I think they got the grade they did, and what the card means to me, and also like I sell a lot of them, so people are interested in that. You know, if you're like, maybe just be open and upfront about what you're doing with those cards and why you graded them, and if you're selling them or not. I think people respond pretty well to that.
Yeah, definitely.
We got about 5 more minutes if you want to hit another one more topic before we loosen it up.
Yeah, let's see here. Okay, I'm seeing some good overtime topics. I'll pass on those for now. Card Shop Dad writes in. He says the Real 27 guy mentioned on his podcast about the hobby grinding to a halt because of lengthy grading times, as we all as longer processing times with consigners and with grading. How much of it, I kind of butchered that. How much of an impact do you think it'll have on smaller transaction grade and flip game? The fact that consigners are taking longer and that grading turnaround time is longer. Do you think it will drive some or many away from the smaller transaction grade and flip game as a way to ladder up?
I mean, isn't it already? Like, we already know it's doing that. So we see it like in the numbers. Like, people are definitely moving away from the smaller transaction milk cards into the like less transactional. I mean, that's just what the data is showing, right? Like, it's true. There's less sales of it because like physically there's less of it coming out. I mean, they're still grading the same. They're grading more than ever. They're actually like pushing out more graded cards than ever. It's just that like each of us feel like it's less because we're getting it back slower. But if you look at the whole market, more of it's actually coming out.
Yeah, it is. And the idea that the hobby has grinded to a halt, I haven't listened to that particular episode yet. I will. But I don't think the hobby is grinding to a halt. I think that quantity of buyers and of items being sold has just overwhelmed the hobby in every segment, whether it's grading turnaround times, whether it's getting items to list with sellers, whether it's, sending stuff to platforms like ComC or StarStock and like waiting to get those processed and uploaded. I've heard that can sometimes take some time. Like it's overwhelming the hobby at every corner. But I don't think the hobby has grinded to a halt. I think that more things are moving at a faster speed than they ever have.
Yeah.
But it can feel that way, if you as an individual are experiencing that in your own, submissions and stuff like that. So
yeah. Can I say something?
Yes.
This is the most this week is the most optimistic I've ever been about sports cards. And we're coming off of like a bear trap, like Lefko said, like a downturn. And the reason I say that is like our whole thing on this channel is like helping educate people and getting them into cards that are more rare. And it's happening. Like, and people are getting smarter and they're making the right decisions. They're switching out of cards. They're like exploring things. There's people looking at all kinds of new cards. The hobby growth, to me, is like at an all-time high, and it's very exciting. We're seeing more celebrities talk about it. Gary Vee is doubling down on it. Guys like Lefko that came in are more excited than ever. Mistakes are still being made, and people are learning from those mistakes, and they're pushing through them. So, like, to me, this is what you want to see, right? Here's a great example. When you're watching a basketball team, you don't want to, like, this is why the Clippers failed. You don't want to see how good a team is playing when everything's going well. You want to see how they respond when shit hits the fan. And so as a hobby, we've seen that sort of like first pushback. Like, someone's punched us in the face. Now how do we respond? Like, how does the market respond to that first reaction? Is it going to go be the Clippers and just like fold and give up? Or is it going to be a more feisty team like the Heat and bounce back and like push towards the fourth quarter, right? So I think it's exciting that we're finally getting punched in the face. And I think we're responding.
Love that take. That's the take of the night right there. If for people who love Prism base and who love Giannis, let's say, or Luka, but you saw Giannis go up to 7,000, you saw Luka go up to 2,000, and you said, there's not a chance that I'm going to get involved in these players' markets for that card, for any card, because the price is just too high right now. Well, both of those guys' markets, especially in the commodity, the milk cards, they have come down in Giannis' case by half, in Luka's case by a little bit less, by around 40%. So, and now both of those guys have hit a plateau. Luka's plateau is about 1,300, and Giannis's is 3,500. Now, those cards remain commodity cards, but they also are indicators, leading indicators of how people are feeling about those players. And if you wanted to see those players' markets retreat, it happened. It happened. And don't be the guy who's just always reacting. And then when next season starts, and all of a sudden, these studs are coming out and they're killing it, and you're bemoaning the fact that their prices are too high to buy stuff, just remember this moment. You had a chance. You had a window.
10 seconds. Yep. Like, now's the time. So make your buys. We'll be back. I'm going to go refill my drink, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
The future is here. An innovation that will change the way the industry works. A Hot 100 chart, updated daily. The most accurate price guide on the market. Every card has its own profile with a wealth of information. Know the precise, real-time value of any card in the system. On demand. You now have the power to unlock the secrets of the hobby. The game changer is here. Card Ladder.